Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the first presentation of our fall series. If you prefer, you can turn off your video during the presentation, and your microphone will also be muted throughout. Our speaker welcomes questions in the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Please use the Zoom chat to send them to me, Chris Duncan Webb, and I will forward them on. We will also publish Michelle's presentation on the lifelong learning section of our CSA website for the next 30 days. Before we start, I would like to say a few words about our greatly loved and respected co-founder, Jean Slat. Jean passed away recently. She was a former French and music school teacher, a driving force behind the establishment and sustained development of the lifelong learning program. Jean also shared her seemingly countless talents with our community and beyond in so many ways. For example, her musical skills led her to form a handbell choir at the high school, to play piano at the United Church, the long-term care facility at Canmore Hospital, and for the Poco Rite Ensemble. Jean was also a member of the Valley Winds Choir. As well, Jean was a leader of the Bow Valley Literacy Program Conversation Group and a member of the Grandmothers to Grandmothers Stephen Lewis Foundation here in Canmore. Jean's love of the outdoors meant she downhill skied until the age of 80, and she was an enthusiastic member of our Neanderthals hiking group. At Lifelong Learning in particular, we will miss Jean's great sense of humor and enthusiastic personality, as well as her creative talents and total commitment. We send our condolences to her family. And now, I have great pleasure in introducing our speaker. Michelle Preston is a long-time Canmore resident who grew up in the Bow Valley and has worked in public libraries for over 30 years. She landed her first library job in high school. After graduating from library school at the University of Alberta, Michelle got her first professional librarian position in Canmore when she was hired as the new children's librarian in 1999. She is currently the director of Canmore Public Library, a position she has held since 2002. And now I'd like to hand over to Michelle.
Thank you, Chris, for that introduction. Okay. Can everybody see my screen? Hopefully. There we go. Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. This year marks the 50th anniversary of the Canmore Public Library. Today, I'd like to tell you our origin story of how the library came to be the community hub that it is today and point out some of our milestones along the way. In December of 1970, the town of Canmore received a letter from an Australian woman by the name of Margaret Tootle. She had amassed a large collection of books and curiosities over the course of her life, and she wanted to bequeath them to the town of Canmore and set up a library and museum. Why here? Well, as a young girl, she had read Anne of Green Gables, and she had formed a strong attachment to Canada. Her attachment only grew over the years as she went on to collect many books on Canada and even created lasting friendships with Canadian pen pals. She dreamed of one day moving to Canada. When she was finally able to visit, she fell in love with the country, especially with the Canadian Rockies. Her visit reaffirmed her desire to live in Canada, and she decided that Canmore was where she would like to spend the rest of her life. She was hopeful her large collection of books and treasures could be left to the town for people to enjoy for generations to come. Alas for Margaret, the town ultimately and firmly said no to her request, citing the many difficulties with public bodies receiving private bequests. The idea for a library, however, had been embraced by council and the community, and it was resolved that the town should start the process of creating their own library and library board. So in March 1971, the process of creating a library began. First, there needed to be a library board, and volunteers from the community were recruited. All those who were contacted about becoming a board member accepted. Among the new board members were Jane Cole, Edna Appleby, who went on to write Canmore, The Story of an Era, a classic book on the history of Canmore, copies of which we have available in the library today. Norma Mazer, who went on to become the library's first director, and Elizabeth Rummel, who I'm sure some of you have heard of before. With the board in place and the paperwork filed, Bylaw 96 was brought forward to Town Council. And on August 10th, 1971, it was passed unanimously. The Canmore Public Library was created as an official entity under the Libraries Act. This did not, however, mean the library was fully functional and ready to accept patrons. There was still a great deal of work to be done. This included finding a location and establishing a collection. Elizabeth Rummel enlisted the help of some friends to get the library set up and running. She, along with Betty Hardley, Doreen Toker, Millie Erickson, Jane Cole, and Norma Mazer, spent many hours in a cold church basement to get the work done. We're lucky to have letters by some of these women recounting those early days in their own words, and I'd like to share excerpts from some of their letters with you now. Betty Hardley wrote in one of her letters about the beginning of the Canmore Library. One day in early 1972, I met Elizabeth Rummel at the post office. She mentioned being busy organizing a library for Canmore. I volunteered the information that I had helped Nancy Boothby in Cochrane during Cochrane's library beginning. So Elizabeth asked me to help her. I went over Tuesdays and Thursdays to the Catholic Church basement. We sorted books from boxes lying on the floor, and I remember an excess of encyclopedias. At this time, though, we hadn't opened for business. What a lot of laughs and pleasure we had together in that cold, cold basement. I pay silent tribute to Elizabeth Rummel for allowing me to be part of the Canmore Library. Very sincerely, Betty Hardley. In another letter, Doreen Toker reminisced, to the best of my knowledge, the library's beginning was in early 1972. It was very cold weather, and so was the church basement. An electric heater helped, but we worked most of the time in our boots and jackets. Lizzie Rummel, Betty Hardley, and myself unpacked boxes and boxes of books, from beautiful hardbacks to pocket novels. We would unpack and sort them into different categories. It was backbreaking and dusty work, and at times very frustrating, but every day had its good times too. People would leave books at Betty's house. We would load up her car and take them to the church. Getting down those slippery steps to the basement was good for a laugh or two. We always had a coffee break, and Lizzie would tell us funny stories of her early years. Most of the books were donated by the local people, and many volumes were old, but they were in good condition. Once the shelves were up and the books in, it started to look like a library. We were getting new books as well, educational, novels, and a good selection of children's books. More shelves went up, and we were in business. Memberships were $1 to join, and the staff were the first members. We were all proud of what we had accomplished, and Lizzie was thrilled. She had told Betty and I at the beginning that it would grow and expand into a great library someday. I'm glad her dream came true, as she was a pleasure to work with and a grand lady. Doreen Toker. And so the library opened in the basement of the Catholic Church and started serving patrons, but it quickly became apparent that this was not an ideal location. The space was poorly heated and the stairs leading to the church basement steep, slippery, and dangerous. Thus, the library board asked council for a new location. Once the request was submitted, it took only 6 days for town council to respond, granting the board's request and authorizing the temporary placement of the library in the council chambers. From there, the library moved into the west wing of the town fire hall. The library was open 8 hours a week, and annual memberships were $5 for adults, $2 for children, and seniors were free. Unfortunately, we don't have any photos of the library from this era, but we heard reports that there was a life-size skeleton and a jail cell. Over the next several years, the library continued to grow and expand. it was becoming more than just a large selection of books. It was developing into a community hub. By 1978, a new larger space was needed so we could offer our patrons all the books, programs, puppet shows, and resources that we dreamed of providing. Ideally, this new space would be one that was designed specifically for a library. By the late 1970s, a new building was being planned for downtown Canmore, Creekside Hall, one that you know well, I'm sure, and one that would be a senior center and library. A new space meant longer hours were possible. Instead of 8 hours a week, the library would now be open for a minimum of 20, and family memberships were introduced. In late 1979, the building was ready and the library moved into the brand new space alongside the Seniors Drop-In Center. That year, a library social was held to show off the new building, and one Alberta culture minister wrote, "The library portion certainly looks pretty good from the outside, and I can see why you can hardly wait to get into it. I can also see by the number of bottles in evidence that it was a pleasant and profitable occasion." About a year later, at the end of 1980, Norma Mazer, the first library manager, stepped down from her position, and Jean Luthi was hired as the new head librarian on December 1st, 1980. The November 12th, 1981 edition of the Canmore Miner provided a review of the new building. A library is certainly a vital part of a growing community like Canmore and should be a place everyone is at home in. The new library is a comfortable place to browse in, no harsh lighting, lots of space, and plenty of windows, including a bay window to view the park while sitting at the reading table. The children's section is scaled to kid size with books easily accessible to even the youngest reader. Unlike many libraries, the atmosphere is friendly and the staff seem willing to help. I'm not sure what other libraries the author had visited, but it's good to know the Canmore Library was a friendly and welcoming place in the 80s, and this is still a tradition we strive to maintain today. In the late 1980s, after more than 10 years as a standalone library, the board decided to join a library system called Marigold. Located in Strathmore, the Marigold Library System had been established in 1981 and was one of 7 library systems in Alberta. We officially became a member of Marigold on March 5th, 1987. And the Marigold system expanded our available resources well beyond our standalone budget. In the 1980s and 90s, this included important services like a union catalog, interlibrary loans, reference assistance, and paperbacks by mail service. Over the years, these services have expanded even further to include high-speed internet access and Wi-Fi, online resources like a collection of downloadable ebooks, audiobooks, movies, and music, library software and mobile applications, training programs, advocacy and marketing resources, and a library courier for interlibrary loan deliveries. Through the 80s, the library used a card catalog and a manual checkout system. And on January 16th, 1990, Canmore Library became computerized for the very first time. That day, staff started using an automated circulation system and put the manual charging system and book stamping behind them, almost. It would be a few more years until the card catalog was fully automated, but having a computer for checking books in and out made extra space at the circulation desk and saved staff time, as the book cards no longer had to be stored or sorted at the counter. There were a few complaints from users who couldn't figure out when their books were due because we no longer stamped the due dates inside the books. But on the whole, staff were happy with the whole operation. Our library has had the good fortune to have the support of an active Friends group for the past 28 years. The Friends of the Canmore Library Society was established in 1993 by a group of citizens who valued good library service for everyone and felt it was critical to help raise funds for improved library services and advocate for any future expansion of the library. One of their first purchases for the library was a new online public access catalog, or OPAC. A press release from March 1995 applauded the usefulness of this new machine, which would replace the card catalog and allow users to look for titles, authors, subjects, and even keywords, and tell them not only if the book was in the library, but if it was actually on the shelf. While the library in Creekside Hall was beautiful, by the 1990s, we were once again running out of space and started to look for a larger building. The Friends were instrumental in actively promoting and fundraising for a new library facility. They held various fundraising events, including a library book sale, a much anticipated event that they are still doing to this day. Proceeds from their fundraising efforts were used to help the library purchase bookshelves and furnishings for the much anticipated new library space that was planned for the renovated Alberta Liquor Store 2 blocks away. There was a ribbon cutting at the grand opening in 1996. A new building was certainly a great way to celebrate the library's 25th birthday that year. As part of this move, and to drum up interest and excitement for the new library, students from Lawrence Grassley Middle School helped form a human chain that passed books from the Seniors Center to the new location behind Main Street. What a great show of community spirit and library supporters. But despite rumors to the contrary, not every single book in the collection was moved this way, only a small part of the collection, but it certainly was a memorable way to mark the occasion. Our ability to provide and share library resources expanded even further in the late 90s when the Marigold system joined with 3 other systems to form TRAC, the Regional Automation Consortium. This consortia facilitated resource sharing between Alberta library systems by creating a combined online catalog called TRACPAC. TRACPAC held a combined catalog with more than 180 library holdings, and today it provides our patrons with seamless access to more than 3 million books, DVDs, and other material. In 2001, after more than 20 years at the Canmore Library helm, Jean Luthi announced her retirement. And on March 1st, 2002, I officially became the new library director. We truly loved our 8th Avenue location, but we continued to grow over the next 10 years, and true to form, we began to run out of space. In the end, we were using the tops of our bookshelves as additional shelving for our expanding collection, and we were packed in like sardines. We conducted an expansion feasibility study in 2005 to determine our growing space requirements and plan a new library facility that would hopefully meet the needs of our community for at least the next 20 years. One of the site options was a piece of land next to the provincial building on Railway Avenue. This site became the preferred choice and future location of a planned multiplex facility that would include a new library. By 2008, we had a new site confirmed and a larger facility to plan for. Once again, the Friends played an important role in our expansion. They ramped up their fundraising efforts, and by 2013, they had raised over $100,000 that went towards the cost of new bookshelves in the Elevation Place facility. In March 2013, we closed our doors at the 8th Avenue location. The movers arrived, and it was time to pack up the library. Over the next 2 weeks, we moved the collection, computers, and furniture and got everything set up in our new home in Elevation Place. Moving the library was no simple task, but staff were up to the job. The grand opening was a true community celebration. Neither the cold nor the rain could keep our wonderful patrons away in April of 2013, when we officially opened our doors in the fabulous, spacious new home inside Elevation Place. When we were finally ready to open our doors, we were delighted to find a crowd of library patrons waiting in the foyer, counting down the seconds out loud in unison until our doors were open. Our new location allowed us to expand even more. We have a dedicated program room, which we use for author talks, movie nights, story times, craft activities, book sales, seniors fairs, the summer reading program, and so much more. 2019 was a significant year for us. The library board had been working with the Banff Canmore Community Foundation, and thanks to the generous contributions of founding donors Elliot and Margie Bingham and the Friends of the Canmore Library, the Library Endowment Fund was established in early 2019. The Endowment Fund is a long-term strategy to support the library. The fund will ensure the library is able to offer its programs and services in difficult economic times and to expand programs and services when a community need is identified. It's a permanent account that's held by the Banff Canmore Community Foundation, and when it reaches the minimum principal balance of $100,000, the BCCF will annually grant a portion of the earnings from the fund to the library in support of its operations. I'm happy to report that this June, we managed to reach our first goal of $100,000, thanks to a tribute campaign in memory of Helmi Bracco, a well-known Canmore resident who was extremely involved in the library and served on the library board in the 1990s. 2019 was also the year that we changed our membership fees. Membership fees had long been a part of library operations, from day one, in fact. Though still one of the best deals in town, at this time adult cards were $12, family cards $20, and seniors $3. This cost did pose a barrier to some of our users. So as one way to increase library accessibility, the library board approved the removal of membership fees in May of 2019. The response to free library memberships was overwhelmingly positive, and new memberships increased 18% that year. Little did we know that starting free memberships in 2019 would also prove beneficial the following year, as we could more easily issue cards to new and existing members during the pandemic closures that were to come. 2020 and the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic proved a challenging time for everyone, the library included. With virtually no notice, our doors were shut and we had no idea when we might reopen. But like any good institution, we managed to pivot, shift our focus, and make the most of it. Though our doors were closed, staff remained busy working on site. We continued to run the library behind the scenes and adapt our various programs and services so our patrons could still access library resources from the comfort and safety of their home. We learned how to use Zoom and how to film and edit videos to deliver our story times virtually. While this was certainly a learning curve, it did prove to have some hidden benefits, like allowing patrons to join us from all over the world for their weekly Storytime fix. We had families join us from Ontario, British Columbia, and even Switzerland on a weekly basis. Using the aforementioned filming and editing skills, we also established our own YouTube channel and put together some instructional videos for our patrons. We learned how to provide curbside pickup service to ensure our patrons could get their books in a safe manner, and even though we had to keep the doors shut. And here's a quick look behind the scenes. Not to leave the patrons out of the picture, we also completed a video that showed people how, once their pickup was ready, they would go about doing so. While we were closed, we were also able to do some projects that we wouldn't have been able to do while we were open, like rearranging the children's area to provide a safer and more comfortable reading area for families and little ones. Without any patrons in the library, we even had the opportunity to have some fun. And here you can see us playing book dominoes through the library. I should mention that these were all books that we were discarding from the collection, not new books that were on our shelves. Outreach services are an important resource that our library provides, and this was particularly important during the pandemic. Just before Mother's Day on 2020, the Canmore Library organized an appreciation convoy to show support for the residents of the local seniors lodge, the long-term care facility at the hospital, and to thank all health co-workers and first responders for their hard work and commitment to keeping our community safe. While vetting the event to local authorities, we were delighted when the Canmore RCMP, Fire and Rescue, and Bylaw Services all decided to join us. Local media attended the convoy and it was shared on many social media accounts. The Bow River Seniors Lodge invited all residents to watch from their windows or in the outdoor courtyard, and it was wonderful to see them waving and sharing in the moment. The Canmore Hospital was equally enthusiastic about the drive-by, recording it to share within the building. Many seniors in long-term care were watching from their windows, and the hospital invited all available staff to join us outside to receive the good wishes. We were moved by their presence, smartphones in hand, recording us to share with their family and friends. 1 year later, our library was actually recognized for this community convoy at our annual Marigold Library System Conference. In May 2021, we won the Making a Difference Award in recognition of the positive impact our library initiative had on our community. This year, despite the ongoing pandemic, we still found ways to safely celebrate a big milestone, the library's 50th birthday. Throughout the year, we've done a number of special activities, held contests, and shared our story with the community. August, being our birthday month, was particularly special for us. We prepared a month-long exhibit highlighting the library's history, showcased it at the museum. During our birthday week, the library was festooned with various decorations, balloons, and streamers. We showcased a community jigsaw puzzle at the entryway, distributed special 50th anniversary cookies, highlighted new books in our in-house displays, and sold some limited edition book bags featuring our 50th anniversary logo. Right now, and until the end of the year, we're still gathering items for a community library time capsule. It's intended to be open 50 years from now when the library celebrates its 100 years. Seeing how much the library has grown and changed in its first 50, one can only imagine what the next 50 years will bring. Now, in the fall of 2021, after a long year and a half that was unlike ever we've experienced before, we're back. Things look a little different than they did, and probably they always will, but it fills us with so much joy to see our patrons back in the library space, using the computers, browsing the stacks, sharing a story with a wee one, or enjoying a newspaper or magazine in our reading area. We have patrons to serve in person again, and the library has come back to life. The past months have challenged us in ways we couldn't have imagined. We survived lots of ups and downs, government mandated closings and openings, and closings and openings, and closings and openings again, policy changes and updates, and the list goes on. But we also learned a ton, and one thing was made abundantly clear. We love our patrons, we love our community, and we love to be here for them, especially during the hard times. Many patrons have reached out to us to tell us what a lifesaver the library has been for them during the pandemic. Curbside pickup for reading materials, helping find their next read when they couldn't browse the stacks on their own, participating in online programs that their child looked forward to each week. All this provided people with a continued connection to their community. It's taken us 50 years, several moves, thousands of books, and many, many hours to get us to where we are today. The library started as a small collection of books housed in a church basement, and now we operate and enjoy a custom-built facility that's in a house that has an in-house collection of over 67,000 items. We started as a small standalone library and now belong to a library system that provides progressive library service to 43 municipalities, the Stoney Nakoda and Siksika nations, and over 320,000 people across South Central Alberta. We've grown our collection, our staff, our programs, our offerings, our memberships, our space, and will continue to do so for the next 50 years and beyond to serve our community in a meaningful way. I hope you will agree that we have lived up to Elizabeth Rummel's aspiration that the Canmore Public Library would one day grow and expand into a great library. Thank you for your time, and we hope to see you at the library.
Thank you, Michelle. So many of us do use the library regularly, so it was really interesting to learn a little bit about the history and the purpose and how you've managed in the past almost 2 years. I certainly have seen the library as a lifeline through Overdrive and using Libby. And I think, like many others, we've read more books over the past 2 years than perhaps we have ever done before. So it was a good experience from that point of view, but a tough time for you. I do have a question, if I can find it. Question is, what are your growth projections for the next few years? And will your current location be adequate for growth?
That's a great question. And that's sort of a question a lot of people have in mind for Canmore. It's hard to know where we're going to end up. We already have a lot of non-permanent residents in addition to permanent residents. So it's tricky to plan in terms of overall numbers. The space we're currently in right now was meant to serve a population upwards of 20,000 people. So ideally, we will have enough space to accommodate future growth for the next several years, but sometimes we do end up growing faster than expected. So we'll have to see what happens there. But our space, we did try to plan for that, so we wouldn't have to move maybe as soon as otherwise would be needed.
I have one very meaningful comment, Michelle. And it's from Jim, and on behalf of many others, he says, Michelle, we really appreciate what you and your library staff have done for the community over the years, but particularly during these stressful COVID times. The library is awesome. So many thanks for that.
That's so nice, thank you.
And as a token of our appreciation for today, and as a sort of a thank you to the Friends of the Canmore Library, we are going to donate from the Canmore Seniors Association $150 in recognition of your birthday.
Thank
I don't
you
mean
so
your
much.
personal birthday, I mean the library's birthday.
Thank you so much. That's very much appreciated.
So many thanks, Michelle. And finally, I hope you've enjoyed today's talk, everybody, and will join us for our second Zoom presentation on October the 18th, when Brenda Holder will be speaking with us. Brenda is a master interpretive guide and an active advocate of Aboriginal tourism. She's been the recipient of several prestigious awards for her work in using her company both in the entrepreneurial spirit and in educating the public after Métis culture. Please watch the notice in the paper trail for more information on that. And finally, a thanks goes to the Rotary Club. And the Rotary Club has generously sponsored this season's lifelong learning presentations. So many thanks to them for making this happen and for this season. So to conclude, thank you all for joining us today. And we will see you all again, unfortunately on Zoom, but hopefully at some point we will be going live this season. But for October the 18th, it will be a Zoom presentation. And I look forward to seeing you all again then. Many thanks and goodbye.